Hi, I'm James from Chaosium. I sat down with Jeff Richard, who is the creative director of Chaosium, and we talked about the BRP book. The book's been out for a while, but the physical edition is releasing shortly, and I wanted to ask Jeff something a bit fun, so I asked him to talk about some of the weird settings that the BRP rule set has been applied to over the years, either in home games or in some official published content. I'll jump across to the interview in just a moment, but first, please remember to subscribe, and thanks for watching.
Well, basic role playing is a universal game engine. I think it even says so in the cover. And as a result, it's an engine that you can use in any setting where it is important to model how the characters interact with the setting. And uh, as a result, I've seen some heck. I've run and played in some pretty crazy BRP settings, and they get the crazier they are, the more likely it's some sort of wonderful homebrewed setting. Way outside niche upon niche, which I think is fantastic.
So, without keeping us in further suspense, then, what are some of the weirdest, strangest BRP settings that you've played or run in?
Okay, I think the cake or the icing on the cake has for a stranger setting has to be one actually my wife Claudia Loroff is running right now, and it is based on her love of Korean modern fantasy television series. And so everybody is members of a magical Korean boy band fighting against evil shamans, demons, ghosts, and creatures from the other world. I'm pretty sure in one session, Monkey King showed up. So I like to think that's probably about as wild a setting out there. It was absolutely I think she's run it 3 times or three total sessions, and it is just totally awesome. So I think that takes the prize. The closest I've ever done in terms of weirdometer is I did for Jason and a couple of other friends. We've run a homage to Philip K. Dick, where in this things and names just get changed for the heck of it. No rhyme or reason to it. So the idea is that the very setting itself is a little bit unreliable. The characters died, and of course, the game continued because we don't even know whether that's actually a death. In the game right now, that the characters are wondering, are we actually just programs running in a computer? So I like to think that one's a pretty nutty game.
So, one of the things that I find really cool about BRP is that whenever I get into my own setting, I can very easily add skills or minor mechanical details to make that setting come to life. And I'd love to see how some of these examples that you've just described have done that. In the game that you talked about, this Korean fantasy game, for example, did you have any major mechanical updates for it? New skills? Do you have
Claudia pretty much will just looted stuff out of the various power chapters and let you select a few of them. And so there was one, and I can't remember precisely how it fit within it, but one of them had the ability to speak to spirits, see and speak to spirits. Another had the ability to create a deafening shock with their voice. All stuff that if you go through the BRP rules is pretty easy, or out of the toolkit. It's pretty easy to find a power that works for that, plug it in, and one of the wonderful things in BRP is you don't have to worry so much that your homebrew game matches everything, aligns everything up correctly, and you also don't have to worry that much about what area, what do the players want to create. You can just kind of build the scenarios around that. And same thing with the Philip K. Dick one. They had a variety of psychic powers. All the characters had mild psychic powers, and there's a psychic ability section of BRP. Although one of the characters said, "Nah, I don't want to have any psychic abilities. I just want to be really good with a gun." And being really good with a gun is nearly as useful in a lot of circumstances as psychic abilities. So another crazy one that I ran a bunch of years back, I ran one where it was set during the Elizabethan era, and it was I think I had just read Neil Stephenson's Baroque trilogy, so Quicksilver, Confusion, System of the World. And so they were a group of explorers slash pirates that were trying to get their hand on gold that could be used for alchemical transformations. So basically the purest of pure gold, which of course came, was cursed Aztec gold or something like that. And the characters included a cartographer based on one of the actual 16th century Dutch or Belgian cartographer. I think it was a Dutch cartographer. And we had a Christian Kabbalist who was an acquaintance of Dr. John Dee. And this is all as the players. And, again, it was a gloriously nutty game. Ran around on, kind of, if you could imagine, one part Sir Francis Drake, another part Rosicrucian conspiracy. And you can do that. I mean, I would love to do a Solomon Kane game, something like that had the feel of Solomon Kane. You could do, and again, you can do games that and settings and campaigns that don't need to be broken into the archetype of fighter, cleric, magic specialist, thief, and variants therein. You could get ones where one of the characters is a cartographer. Hey, what's his superpower? Well, he can read Latin and Greek and Arabic.
My standard here might be to ask what some of the weirder characters that you've heard of, but I know just you look at RuneQuest, you look at Call of Cthulhu, the pre-gens are full of all kinds of weird and wacky things. So I'll take a little bit of a different direction and ask this. There's a pretty cool long history to all of the games that have BRP in their DNA. And I'd be interested to hear what one of the stranger games officially published, either by Chaosium or anyone that you could think of, that uses BRP or effectively BRP in its creation. I hear stories about ElfQuest, which I'm not super familiar with.
Oh, I played a lot of ElfQuest. That's based on the fantastic comic, which is still around. Great game. You play what are elves in the setting, and I have to put quotation marks because they bear no resemblance whatsoever to the Gloranthan elves. Nephilim is I love Nephilim. It's one of my favorite settings and games. Let's see here. We've got Ringworld, which is, again, it's one of my absolute favorite settings. And it's the most gloriously unbalanced setting imaginable, where you can have a party can include everything from a nearly immortal martial arts specialist who has been, training for 120 years with the equivalent of the secret police, secret service for the United Nations, right? Ability to take down Gloranthan characters rune lords with barely a notice, and with all the high-tech weaponry that you could imagine in the 29th century. And another character in the same group can be a dolphin.
I think you have mentioned the famous dolphin character, which is
I love
absolutely.
the dolphin character. We had a party that had the most recent one I ran. It had the arm agent, basically our secret service, secret police guy, a dolphin. And something, dolphins are really, really useful when they get to swim around in the water, but that doesn't happen that much in a game. So he's usually in this big clunky walking suit. I am a dolphin. Can't really do anything. And we had a grad student in anthropology was to round out the group, which I think is fantastic. That's the way to do it.
And none of them fit into the fighter mage cleric, I think, is also quite interesting.
Well, I guess the secret police guy certainly had the fighter stuff down. But you can do this all with BRP. I mean, there's been some bug nuts, crazy Elric Stormbringer games that I've played in, and that's another. I love that setting. I've loved Michael Moorcock's stories since I was a kid. Huge influence on me, and again, you can have characters that just run the gamut. The gambit of that, and that's what I love about the BRP universal game engine. Is it's not just RuneQuest and Cthulhu and Pendragon, which admittedly it can be often pretty far out, but you can go way further and way crazier than that.
Let me ask you one last question to finish off with then. I'm a little bit of a fan of, I guess you'd call them TTRPG covers, not literally the covers, but remixing one rule setting and playing a module from a different game. I'm always a fan of trying to take an officially published campaign from one thing and trying to play it using a completely different rule setting, which might be a bit sacrilegious to some, but I encourage people to give it a try. If you had to take BRP and play another established game or another established campaign that you think is out there, what would be a really interesting mix?
Oh, I've done that a lot of times. I mean, I have, especially back in the 90s, I had a fascination with playing a lot of different game systems. And what I found at a certain point is that a lot of them had rule systems that I found after running several sessions a little bit counterintuitive. Maybe that's just a weakness of me as somebody running games, but that I would at some point think, God, wouldn't this be better if we could just adapt it to the BRP engine? So we did Ars Magica as using BRP, and that worked really easy. And you can see it, if I remember, we ended up doing the same thing with Vampire the Masquerade. Again, it's how easy is it? It's really easy. How hard is it to port some of those powers from Vampire into the BRP system? Not hard at all. We tried a game that originally was going to use GURPS, in which I have at the time had a love-hate relationship. I loved all the splat books and all the setting books that GURPS had. But at the end of the day, I always found the GURPS engine really, really frustrating and very easy for a couple of my players to really power game in weird ways. And so we had one that was it was the set at the time of the First Crusade. It ended up becoming a BRP game. It started as a GURPS game, became a BRP. We had another one where we were playing Viking settlers in North America. Started as a GURPS game, and then somebody pointed out, well, you could just use the RQ3 Vikings book for the core engine. Oh yeah, you certainly could. So I tried once many years back, I tried once to do one of my favorite first edition D&D adventures with I tried it once with the HeroQuest engine and once with BRP, and that's the Hall of the Fire Giant King, if you remember that one. I believe that's G3 from the old AD&D series. And when it was HeroQuest, the characters were way more cautious than the D&D characters, but they still could go through. When it was BRP, the characters just went, no, we're not going to take on 20 fire giants. That's suicidal. And I loved it because you used this different engine. All the things were kind of ported over conceptually. And in D&D, when I played it, you kind of charge in, you kill everything, you take their stuff. And with HeroQuest, as long as there was a narrative story there, they were able to deal with that. But at BRP, they went, it was, wait, not one giant. There are literally like 40 giants in this complex. You've got to be kidding. And, it felt like playing a video game on ultra hard mode. And so there was a lot of sneaking. And at a certain point, they went, hey, wait, we're already richer than we can imagine. Our characters could imagine because it's BRP. Let's just leave with all our loot, which I loved. I thought that was fantastic. Everybody had a great time.